The way the world is formed today are all based on historical events that helped shape it, especially the movements that push for equality, ethics, values, and justice for all walks of life. Hi, my name is Jessa.
Hi, I'm Vee, and let's talk about the top 10 historical movements that changed the world. Number 10. The English Revolution. The English Revolution, which is apparently also referred to as the Glorious Revolution, occurred between 1688 and 1689. It forged a pivotal moment in history as it led to the public expulsion of King James II and the subsequent ascension of William and Mary to the throne. This event is widely regarded as a crucial transformation in the evolution of constitutional governance, particularly in shaping the role of Parliament. The movement gained momentum amidst concerns about James II's autocratic rule and his attempts to expand Catholic influence in Protestant England. It was an interplay of political, religious, and social factors that fueled the masses of the revolution. The Glorious Revolution laid the groundwork for fundamental principles of governance such as constitutional limitations on royal power and the supremacy of Parliament. This period saw the emergence of ideas that would come to influence political thought. The Glorious Revolution set a precedent for peaceful political transitions and the resolution of conflicts through constitutional means. Number 9. The Haitian Revolution. The Haitian slave revolt took place from 1791 to 1804 and ended up leading to the establishment of the first independent black-led nation in the Western Hemisphere, which we now know as Haiti. The French colony of Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, was a major producer of sugar and coffee, worked by enslaved Africans in brutal conditions. In August 1791, the revolt ignited with a voodoo ceremony. Led by figures like Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and Henri Christophe, enslaved Africans rebelled against the oppressive French rule. Toussaint Louverture emerged as a brilliant military strategist, leveraging guerrilla tactics against the French forces. His leadership and negotiation skills garnered international attention. In 1804, Haiti declared its official independence, becoming the first black-led republic. The success of the Haitian Revolution had a significant impact on the institution of slavery globally, inspiring enslaved individuals and abolitionists alike to take action and speak up. The Haitian Revolution led to fear among white European powers and influenced geopolitics. It also played a role in Napoleon's decision to sell the Louisiana territory to the United States. The Haitian slave revolt stands as a symbol of resistance against oppression and had a profound, lasting impact on the fight against slavery and colonialism. Haiti's independence was a beacon for liberation movements worldwide.
Number 8. Women's suffrage feminist movement. In 1840, two amazing women named Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were prevented from attending the World Anti-Slavery Convention held in London. This prompted these two abolitionist women to hold their own women's convention in the US. After 9 years later, the first state constitution in California extended their property rights to women, and after another decade, women like Antoinette Brown and Susan B. Anthony were not allowed to speak at the World's Temperance Convention held in New York City. By 1866, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony formed the American Equal Rights Association, an organization dedicated to the goals of the suffrage for all regardless of gender or race. For almost 100 years, women were fighting for their right to vote, to own, to create, and to be able to speak freely without exclusion or persecution in public spaces. But even after the 1920s, once women were able to be kinda included in the US Constitution, it would still take another 100 years for women to take control of their rights. As the feminist movement that then exploded after that time, women still continued to face the social economic exploitations and inequality on rights to choose. As of late in 2022, the law reversing Roe v. Wade had placed a lot of women in a place around the world at a risk of endangerment for their right to choose for their own body autonomy. But like all movements, we still have a lot of work to do. Number 7. The Vietnam War. When Vietnam exploded into a war that lasted from the 1950s to the 1970s, the violence it endured had displaced and eradicated many Vietnamese people. Because of the United States' involvement in the communist parties that had exploded conflict in the regions, Vietnam War protests began among peace activists and leftist intellectuals on college campuses. After a brutal confrontation with the soldiers and the US Marshals protecting the building, hundreds of demonstrators were arrested. Joining the anti-war demonstrations by this time were members of the organization Vietnam Veterans Against the War, many of whom were in wheelchairs and on crutches. The sight of these men on television throwing away the medals as they had won during the war did much to win the people over of the anti-war cause. Eventually, once the notions grew and public pressure was imminent, it wasn't until Nixon announced that the effective end to the US involvement in Southeast Asia in January 1973. And despite the efforts, the conversation of anti-war still persists, as it does bring a lot of recognition in current times. Despite the politics, over 22,000 civilians in Gaza are dead, which include 12,000 children. Over millions and millions around the world do not care for this war rhetoric, for oil or resources or whatever means the cause, but war in Vietnam, as it had happened, as so many wars, had sparked these conversations of anti-war movements, as why so many people are so persistent today to end all forms of violence.
Number 6. Stonewall. In the early hours of June 28, 1969, the Stonewall Inn in New York City witnessed a turning point in history. A series of clashes erupted between police and LGBTQ activists, marking the birth of an amazing and influential international gay rights movement. At the time, solicitation of homosexual relations was illegal, which led to frequent police harassment towards gay bars. The Stonewall Inn, a refuge for the LGBTQ community, faced a third raid on the fateful night of June 28. Unlike previous incidents, the patrons and bystanders didn't disperse into the streets for their own safety. Instead, when attacked and mercilessly provoked, their visible anger and vocal protests escalated, resulting in a 5-day riot. The LGBTQ community, fed up with perpetual harassment, found a collective voice against discrimination. The riots occurred amidst the civil rights and feminist movements, prompting lesbians, gays, and transgender individuals to unite for a common cause. This unity laid the groundwork for the gay rights movement. Stonewall became a lasting symbol of resistance against social and political discrimination. It inspired the formation of numerous gay rights organizations globally, many of which are still active and prominent today. Number 5. Earth Day. Earth Day, started in 1970, emerged as a response to environmental concerns, spearheaded by Democratic Senator Gaylord Nelson. He was prompted by witnessing the environmental devastation caused by an oil spill, so he drew inspiration from the effectiveness of recent anti-war protests and envisioned a day dedicated to advocating for a healthier, more sustainable planet. On April 22, 1970, the first Earth Day witnessed an unprecedented turnout, with over 20 million people participating in demonstrations across tens of thousands of locations in the US. The movement symbols, the gas mask and a flower, reflected the contrast and juxtaposition of the ongoing environmental struggle. The significance of Earth Day extended beyond symbolic gestures. It catalyzed immediate legislative changes. By the year's end, key environmental protection acts ensuring clean air and water were enacted, as well as laws safeguarding endangered species that were put in place. Earth Day's impact was felt globally, inspiring annual observances and fostering a collective consciousness about environmental issues. Earth Day still remains a widely observed annual event. I mean, I remember sitting in the dark of my house at 8 p.m. waiting for my mom to light the candles. It serves as a reminder of the power of grassroots movements in influencing legislative change and raising awareness about environmental challenges.
Number 4. Occupy Wall Street Fight for $15. Occupy Wall Street, or OWS, was a protest movement that emerged in the United States in the fall of 2011. The movement's central focus was to address issues related to economic inequality, corporate influence in politics, and the perceived undue influence of financial institutions, particularly those on Wall Street in New York City. The protests began in Zuccotti Park in the financial district of Manhattan and quickly spread to other cities across the United States and around the world. The movement was sparked by the dissatisfaction of a diverse group of activists, largely fueled by the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, which affected a lot of us, as well as our families. Activists were critical of what they saw as a growing wealth gap and the role of financial institutions in the crisis and the influence of money in politics. As an example, for the fight of $15 was in fact also the United States needing to push for a livable wage, aka just $15. The fight for $15 continues to be an ongoing campaign, with activists advocating for further legislative changes at both the state and federal levels. The movement has also expanded internationally with similar campaigns in other countries. Number 3. The Black Panther Party. When it comes to civil liberties and civil rights, it was not always fair for all. The Black Panther Party, or BPP, was a revolutionary socialist organization group that emerged in the United States in the 1960s. Founded by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale in Oakland, California in 1966, the Black Panther Party outlined its goals and principles of the 10-point program, which called for an end to police brutality, employment opportunities, decent housing, education, and justice for African Americans. The program emphasizes the rights of African Americans to defend themselves against police violence. Black Panther members conducted community patrols, monitoring and observing police interactions with residents. The presence of armed Panthers was intended to deter police misconduct and violence in African American communities. However, it did bring a lot of intensity, scrutiny, and harassment from the US government that aimed to undermine and neutralize civil rights and black liberation movements. And although, due to the internal and external causes that forced its decline and disbandment, the Black Panther Party has left a lasting impact on American society and politics. It is remembered for its efforts to address racial injustice, systematic inequality, and police violence. Even with its notions today, it leads us to our next important movement.
Number 2. Black Lives Matter movement. I'm sure at this point every one of you knows about Black Lives Matter, so you may be thinking, oh my god, enough about Black Lives Matter, we get it, you guys aren't worthless, blah blah blah, I know everything, I'm accepting, I don't see color, I treat every one of you people exactly as I would treat a white person. Yeah, well, okay, if you're thinking that, I think you're the one who needs to hear the most. Black Lives Matter gained a lot of traction in 2020 after the horrific killings and displays of barbarity that strung from government officials, aimed towards multitudes of black citizens in North America. The Black Lives Matter movement has been around a lot longer and has been fighting for justice for many more victims of racially profiled state-inflicted aggression. The movement was created on July 13th of 2013 in the form of a hashtag which was used on social media after the acquittal of George Zimmerman in regards to the unjust shooting of a young black man, Trayvon Martin. The hashtag gained traction, protests against police barbarity, and the governmental ignorance began. Their mission as a group was to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in aggression inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. In response to black people gaining traction through the Black Lives Matter movement, another opposing movement was created with the direct purpose of silencing and diminishing the impact of the BLM movement. This opposing movement, spearheaded by angry white people who believed for some reason they were being attacked, gained popularity in, well, the places you would expect it to, the Republican states of the USA. I don't want to give the opposing movement the time of day. Note the use of quotations around movement because it's not a legitimate movement or cause. Black Lives Matter was created to uplift an extremely oppressed population and to remind everyone, especially the government and people in power, that black lives cannot be ignored and should be treated with just as much care as any other race. It is literally in the name. Black Lives Matter. Simple as that.
And finally, number 1, Myanmar coup in 2021. When it comes to current times and today's movements, one most notable aside the one right now in regards to Palestine and Gaza, it also includes the Myanmar coup, the protests that occurred in 2021. It all happened when Myanmar's government had held an election between Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and the militia government, who lost the election by 70% vote for Daw. But the militia did not think the election was fair and thought it was rigged and announced militia law. Because of this, all of Myanmar was held captive in early 2021, and many protest sparks from all walks of life, from monks, models, college students, even couples who postponed their own wedding. Over 2,900 protesters today have been killed and 14,000 have been arrested, and at least over 700,000 people have been displaced. Even now, people are afraid but are still trying to speak up against their dictators. As similar to the war in Gaza, the movements sparked outrage around the world and recognizing so many more issues that lie in countries captivated by violation caused by dictatorship government. Over 2 million protests were held in Indonesia, 1 million in London, and even more millions around the world, all asking for a ceasefire in Gaza as well as Myanmar for Congo and Sudan. These movements have sparked a revelation in people in order to speak up for those who cannot. And also, just a little tidbit here in regards to Myanmar, a student in York University had also asked the teacher if she could have an exam exempted for it because she had a war in Myanmar, and the teacher said no. This sparked outrage online, and eventually that guy got fired, so I have to add that. I was like, that man got fired. I was like, he's like,
there's a war.
There's a war in Myanmar, and he's like, oh, that doesn't excuse your exam. I'm like,
okay,
sir. Okay. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for joining us, and we hope these movements inspire you today to fight for change as well.
I hope you liked the video, and of course, I hope you learned something. And you'll say it with me.
Oh yeah. Bye.